Donald Trump is suing CNN for defamation. He claims the network tarnished his image by calling him a racist, a Russian lackey, and he says they frequently compared him to Hitler. You
test ABC out on this. Let's see how we do. Last time I went after them, they gave me $16 million. This one sounds even more lucrative. A true bunch of losers. Only Donald Trump would try to prove he wasn't threatening ABC by threatening ABC. And you almost have to feel sorry for the people who work for him, who try to...
Something major just shook the world, where Hollywood and politics collide, and the impact was impossible to ignore. Donald Trump woke up facing a storm he probably did not expect, while Jimmy Kimmel stepped straight into the spotlight, ready for a direct clash backed by receipts and a timing that felt almost too perfect. Then, another twist appeared right on cue when a fresh lawsuit suddenly entered the picture as if it had been waiting for the exact moment to make its entrance. The situation instantly sparked a flood of questions that everyone started asking at once. What exactly was said that triggered this reaction? Who filed what paperwork? And why are attorneys suddenly working harder than producers scrambling backstage during Oscar night chaos? The story moves fast, it shifts direction without warning, and every new detail lands with surprising force. So settle in, silence your phone, grab some popcorn, and stay focused, because where this story ends up is not where anyone expected it to go.
Trump is trying to intimidate you or maybe others from coming forward?
Well, that's the whole purpose of this lawsuit. It's to harass and intimidate. It's not just to harass and intimidate me. It's also to put out a message.
And he's already figured out where to get the money. Trump today became the first president to sue the New York Times. He's suing the New York Times for $15 billion for defamation. $15 billion. Where does he even come up? These are like numbers my children make up when they're talking about money. I thought he said the New York Times was failing. He thinks they have $15 billion.
Before we dive deeper into this wild situation, make sure you tap the like button and subscribe, because this is one story you will definitely want to follow all the way through. The chaos really started the moment Donald Trump decided that disagreement itself was no longer just part of public conversation, but something that should be handled inside a courtroom. At that point, the discussion stopped being about policies or results and started revolving around the idea that anything existing outside his approval somehow crossed a line. Jimmy Kimmel did not immediately jump in to shut it down or argue the point. Instead, he took a step back, watched everything unfold, and allowed the entire spectacle to reveal itself naturally without interrupting the moment.
He never threatened. J.D. Vance today made the claim that what the FCC chairman said was a joke, which, I don't know, maybe that was a joke? I don't know. They go to all these lengths to say, oh, it wasn't coercion, the president was just musing. And then the second Trump is alone, he sits on the toilet, he gets his grubby little thumbs on his phone, and he immediately blows their excuses to smithereens and says, it was ratings that got me fired.
Trump filing lawsuits the way most people casually submit noise complaints quickly grew into something far bigger than a single headline or one legal story. Suddenly, it felt like courts, critics, corporations, commentators, television cameras, comedians, and almost anyone paying attention might end up receiving legal papers simply for being in the same environment. Jimmy Kimmel observed the entire situation like it was an ongoing comedy sketch that keeps raising the stakes because nobody ever reaches over to mute the microphone.
Sue for if he thought they were doing well. Trump announced the suit this morning. He wrote, today I have the great honor of bringing a $15 billion defamation and libel lawsuit against the New York Times, one of the worst and most degenerate newspapers in the history of our country. The Times has engaged in a decades-long method of lying about your favorite president, me, my family business, the America First movement, MAGA, and our nation as a whole. The New York Times has been allowed to freely lie, smear, and defame me for...
Trump seemed to rely on legal action whenever reality refused to give him applause. One negative headline, a critical remark, or even a chart moving in the wrong direction could suddenly be followed by official paperwork appearing almost instantly. The response felt automatic, like disagreement itself triggered a legal reaction without any pause to reconsider or reflect on whether escalation was actually necessary.
Wednesday. This was his big closer. Let Jimmy Kimmel rot in his bad ratings. And he does know bad ratings. He has some of the worst ratings any president has ever had. So, on behalf of all of us, welcome to the crappy ratings club, Mr. President. Next, he'll try to sue us. And I want to say good luck with that, because we thought about it, we packed the courts, and we have a surprise ace up our sleeve, Mr. Judge Steve.
Jimmy Kimmel treated this pattern less like a serious legal strategy and more like an elaborate stage performance where the star insists everyone else is ruining the production. The logic behind it appeared almost painfully simple. If someone disagrees, file a lawsuit. If someone laughs, increase the pressure. If something simply exists quietly in the background, threaten it anyway just to be safe. Kimmel never tried to argue with the absurdity of the situation because it already explained itself. Instead, he stepped aside and allowed the entire process to speed forward until the punchline arrived on its own. The sequence became easy to recognize. Trump hears criticism, Trump raises the stakes, Trump promises consequences, and then Trump appears surprised when consequences eventually circle back. Kimmel leaned into that rhythm and allowed viewers to experience just how predictable the cycle had become. Lawsuits stopped feeling like careful legal actions and began resembling emotional letters typed in capital letters and delivered through certified mail. Each new target made the pattern louder rather than stronger, and somehow Trump's unwavering confidence made the entire situation even more amusing.
And then he follows it with, this suit is being brought in the great state of Florida. Uh-oh. And will be heard by Judge Dog the Bounty Hunter, my new appointee. Trump is, he won't win this. And the New York Times won't settle. Trump says the Times is run by a bunch of lefties. He claims they're a mouthpiece for the Democrats. And I have to say, I did do today's Wordle, and I don't know if you did, but he might be right.
There was never a moment of hesitation or uncertainty in the reaction, only immediate retaliation wrapped in absolute confidence. Kimmel highlighted that certainty as one of the most exaggerated aspects of the entire situation. The idea that filing legal paperwork automatically proved someone right slowly turned into a running joke, drifting through the segment like background noise that refused to disappear. As the story widened, the satire became sharper. Critics, watchdog groups, businesses, former allies, and even random voices online gradually blended into one giant category labeled opposition. Kimmel described Trump's legal outlook as a world where accountability always looks like persecution and any pushback instantly becomes personal. The longer the list of enemies grew, the weaker the explanation seemed to appear. Eventually, the behavior stopped resembling a thoughtful defense and began to look more like pure instinct. Kimmel barely needed exaggeration because Trump's own history had already written most of the script. Every situation followed the same path with a constantly changing cast, and simply allowing those actions to speak loudly on their own was enough to remove their intimidation.
Of course, visited his new building this morning to take credit for his work bringing together the leaders of Rwanda and the Congo.
I want to thank the two courageous leaders. They are courageous leaders. They really are courageous leaders, great people. President Tshisekedi.
Perfect. Could we hear that again?
Tshisekedi.
As the story expanded, Trump's relationship with disagreement itself became the real focus. Opposition was not treated as something to answer or debate, but as something that needed to disappear entirely. Kimmel highlighted this mindset by treating it with exaggerated seriousness that quietly removed its power instead of strengthening it. The tighter Trump tried to grip control over the narrative, the more unstable the entire effort appeared. One legal threat blended into another until they started sounding almost identical. Trump was not just responding to criticism anymore, he was actively chasing it, confronting it, and then punishing it for simply existing. Kimmel stitched these moments together into one continuous story of escalation that never seemed to produce resolution. The humor came from imagining lawsuits as the solution to every problem, like someone trying to quiet a noisy room by yelling at the furniture. The energy remained loud, but strangely hollow, and that contradiction became the fuel that powered the comedy.
When he wasn't sleeping, Rip Van Winkle was lying. He said grocery prices are down. They're not down. He said he's cutting prescription drug prices 900%. That's ridiculous. In the brief time he was conscious, though, he had a lot to say.
The Lincoln bathroom is now gorgeous. I took my physical. I got all A's, everything. I should get the Nobel Prize for every war, but I don't want to be greedy. Elon Omar is garbage. Boot edge. And it's supposed to be.
As the segment continued, Trump began to resemble a walking cabinet filled with grievances ready to be filed at any moment. The legal system slowly became part of the image itself, appearing less about final outcomes and more about the spectacle surrounding it. Kimmel allowed that picture to settle in viewers' minds, presenting Trump as someone who believed confrontation alone proved strength. Each threat carried urgency, but rarely delivered closure, leaving behind a trail of noise that comedy quickly reused. The pattern stayed unchanged: react, attack, repeat. Instead of meeting that energy with outrage, Kimmel answered it with calm consistency, and that contrast landed far harder than direct confrontation ever could. Lawsuits slowly transformed into symbols rather than weapons, reminders of a worldview where simply being challenged becomes the ultimate offense.
Ms. Tshisekedi, President Tshisekedi. From the Congo, they call it Congo. But don't interrupt Donald Trump when he's in the middle of a little stroke. This conflict between Rwanda and the Congo has been going on for decades. Millions of people have been killed. They're still fighting as of today. But that didn't stop Dr. Art of the Deal from acting like he mediated a dispute between neighbors over a broken sprinkler head.
I think they liked each other a lot. I spent time with them. I think they liked some people may be surprised.
By the time attention shifted back to the newest legal move, the actual details almost felt secondary. Momentum had taken the place of meaning. Trump's reliance on escalation itself had become the real story, rather than any single lawsuit. Kimmel trusted viewers to notice that shift without spelling it out directly. What remained in the air was the image of someone constantly offended by resistance, armed with stacks of paperwork and absolute certainty. The comedy did not rush toward a dramatic conclusion because the behavior itself never paused long enough to reach one. Every new move simply promised continuation instead of closure. Laughter slowly built as seriousness collapsed under the weight of repetition. Nothing needed to explode for the absurdity to stand out. It stayed open-ended, waiting patiently for the next moment when disagreement would somehow earn another date in court. Lawsuits no longer looked like carefully chosen actions. They looked automatic, almost like muscle memory triggered by friction.
Who has 5 engines on the back of a boat going in weird directions? The land of 1,000 lakes, or however many lakes they have, they got a lot of lakes. Somalians, let's go with the fat drug, FAT, for fat people. They said to me, would you like to take a cognitive test? I said, is it hard?
He's doing great. Don't worry about him at all. And his team, he's got quite a team. His team is crushing it.
The repetition was not boring at all. In fact, it became revealing. Every fresh legal threat looked nearly identical to the one before it, promising dominance while delivering familiar results. Trump never approached criticism halfway. The response always arrived at maximum intensity, maximum drama, and maximum volume. Kimmel framed this pattern as an extreme commitment to escalation, where every disagreement felt like the final boss battle in a game that nobody else even realized they were playing. The level of intensity rarely matched the moment, causing the moment itself to collapse under its own weight. What sharpened the contrast even more was Trump's belief that louder meant stronger. Bigger threats, heavier language, thicker stacks of documents. Kimmel placed that belief side by side with reality, where outcomes refused to cooperate. The difference explained itself. Over time, lawsuits stopped looking reactive and began appearing preventative, almost as if anything that might oppose Trump had already been labeled a future defendant.
They've spent a lot of time killing each other, and now they're going to spend a lot of time hugging, holding hands, and taking advantage of the United States of America economically like every other country does. Look at them. Look at the way they love each other. Thank you.
Well, that doesn't look like love to me.
Slowly, the legal system started to resemble a protective barrier against discomfort rather than a place to resolve disputes. Kimmel allowed that idea to breathe while sketching a world where simple disapproval could require a filing fee. The satire shifted smoothly from individual cases to the instinct behind them. Trump seemed less like someone responding to events and more like someone reacting to the possibility that events could exist without him. Kimmel treated this mindset with dramatic seriousness, as if it were a bold philosophical theory rather than a repeating outburst wrapped in formal language. That exaggerated weight caused the entire concept to collapse inward. What once shocked people quickly turned into routine. Kimmel highlighted how quickly outrage faded into background noise. When everything feels urgent all the time, nothing manages to stay important for long. Comedy thrived in that narrow space between urgency and exhaustion, where attempts to control attention only created more attention for the very things meant to disappear.
To really get in there and make sure the president's colonoscopy didn't miss anything.
Spirit in our ranks since the election under President Trump is unprecedented. I've never seen anything like it as a soldier myself in uniform.
I think 2026 is going to be great for the American people, thanks to you.
It's going to be great.
As I sit here today, I can't be more proud of how you did it, sir. You've created the greatest cabinet. It is a joy to be at this table.
Does anybody write about it? Nobody writes about it. That's okay.
Eventually, the act of filing lawsuits began to look more important than actually winning them. Visibility started to matter more than victory. Kimmel framed this habit almost like a branding strategy, where conflict keeps attention alive through constant noise and drama. The observation was not cruel, just straightforward. The pattern repeated itself too perfectly to ignore. A complaint appears, retaliation follows, and resistance suddenly becomes disrespect. Kimmel never openly labeled the sensitivity behind it. Instead, he allowed it to sit quietly in the background and trusted viewers to notice it themselves. The louder the reaction became, the more clearly vulnerability seemed to show through. Over time, legal action transformed from a process into a symbol. It stopped feeling like a tool for courts and started looking like a method of maintaining control through official documentation. Kimmel played with that image by letting lawsuits represent emotional territory rather than genuine necessity.
Which leader was that again?
Chiseki.
And then it was time for the Nobelephant in the room to take a well-deserved victory nap, one of many victory naps this week.
These two great Africans who are at the beginning, who started the Luanda and the Nairobi processes. And beyond them, I wish to thank also all of the African leaders who...
The humor carried forward smoothly from one transition to the next without losing its pace. Each example reinforced simplicity instead of complexity. The response stayed the same while the target changed. The same anchor appeared at a different address. Kimmel built the jokes around predictability because anticipation actually made the punchline stronger instead of weakening it. Trump's inability to ignore opposition powered the entire segment from beginning to end. Silence never seemed like an option. Every criticism demanded an answer, and every challenge called for punishment. Kimmel presented this impulse as both exhausting and strangely renewable. The energy never disappeared, yet the futility behind it never changed either. Slowly, the legal system itself faded into abstraction. Courtrooms and filings became more like costumes than substance. Kimmel stayed focused on behavior because behavior revealed the real story. The paperwork simply became the uniform.
a president and more like a property brother. He blew up the East Wing. He redecorated the Oval Office. He paved over the Rose Garden.
Take very good care of property. I paid for them. Marble, the most beautiful marble you've ever seen.
Wish the master builder would master build in private like the rest of us do.
The most beautiful floors, the most beautiful lights and chandeliers, and now it'll be the most beautiful ballroom anywhere in the world.
Wait a minute. Is it possible that he's planning to sell the White House?
The escalation eventually became so automatic that it started parodying itself. Trump reacted before the echo of the previous moment even finished fading away. Kimmel allowed that speed to become the punchline itself. There was never a pause for reflection, only repetition until the idea of novelty completely vanished. At its core, the comedy painted a picture of permanence. No lessons learned, no adjustments made, and no strategies refined over time. Kimmel quietly suggested that nothing ever truly resolved because every situation was simply replaced by another. The cycle continued forward with fresh paperwork and new targets. Trump shifted from aggressor to generator, producing conflict the same way a machine releases exhaust. Kimmel never stated this directly. He allowed repetition to make the argument naturally. Familiarity carried the audience forward without needing explanation, and intimidation slowly dissolved into spectacle.
For the headache he is creating with his buddy RFK blaming autism on Tylenol. His press conference yesterday was an all-timer. Trump, Bobby Brainworm, and Dr. Oz strongly recommend that pregnant women stop taking Tylenol immediately, and the president was very persuasive making his case.
When the alternative is that nothing bad can happen, let's do it now. I was just saying to Bobby and the group, let's do it.
As the segment moved forward, the growing pile of legal threats began to feel heavier than any single one of them on its own. The weight came not from the consequences, but from what the pattern implied. This appeared to be the method, the routine used to handle disagreement and maintain attention at the same time. Kimmel allowed that realization to settle gradually, rather than forcing it onto the audience. Laughter shifted from quick bursts into steady amusement as each moment stacked on top of the last. Nothing wrapped up neatly because closure never seemed to be the goal. Resolution requires reflection, and reflection never entered the process. One target faded while another took its place, keeping the rhythm moving forward. Escalation became continuity, and continuity became the entire story. Every new filing signaled not change, but consistency, suggesting that the next disagreement would trigger the exact same ritual in a different form.